There was this couple that my parents used to know a long time ago, and they never told me this until just recently. Now, to make it a very big and brief, if for context, this took place back in 2013. This couple my parents used to know was were the names Mary and John. They both had gotten married as they had been together for about 5 years now. Now, John's parents were how my mom and dad knew them. So, taken at this point, Mary and John had finally decided to get married in the summer of 2013. They decided to take their honeymoon to the Bahamas. It was a really beautiful place with islands, plains, places to explore, etc. They have beautiful hotels and lots of great beaches and islands. However, the first 2 days, when it came to the Bahamas after getting settled in, the first 2 days were filled with sun, sand, laughter, jokes, as they too shared their love and excitement. However, though, they had decided to spend the third night away from the beach and pool in a hotel room on the main boulevard of town. Now, as they unpacked for the night, they started to relax when John noticed that there was movement behind the curtains in the corner of their hotel room. Mary looked but didn't see anyone and thought that maybe it could be maybe just some wind and closed the window. However, it wasn't until later on at night, it was around 12 a.m., when John heard that noise again coming from the curtains. Honestly, the window was open again, but Mary had swore that she closed them. John pulled back the curtains only to discover someone was crouching down at the far corner of the room in what appeared to be the closet. He was breathing heavily. At first, when Mary woke up, she and John were filled with shock, not knowing what to do. They suddenly saw the person in the corner let out a loud and fierce scream at them, like if the person was mentally ill. That's when Mary and John realized that they'd been followed by someone, but how would they have known where they were and stuff? Honestly, that was creepy. Of course, that's when John got into a bit of a physical fight with him, but however though, he managed to knock him back. Mary immediately called the police and even security. However, when they got to the room, the intruder was gone with no trace or evidence on who the person could have been. They searched the entire room, but unfortunately they found no one in there. Honestly, John was confused as to how this person was able to regain conscious and walk off with being unconscious from his powerful punch. All was left was the eerie echo of fear still lingering in the room that they had requested another room. Devastated and amazed at the same time, they both stood in silence of their hotel room, their new one after they got switched to another room. They were wondering who was this person have been, and why were they being stalked. They spent the remainder of their honeymoon, of course, watching over their shoulders in case the stalker returned. However, they did not let that ruin their honeymoon, and they continued to do it, but without any problems or anyone or anything getting in their way. Although they were eventually returned to their pleasant life after the honeymoon, Mary and John never forgot that creepy evening. It reminded them always to remain vigilant of all facets of life. However, they were wondering of who this person was or if he was ever caught. They had no idea who he was or what he wanted or if he was just some dangerous person. However, they have not gotten updates about it regarding. They would like to think that maybe he was just some mentally ill person, was homeless and didn't even know what to do. However, this really startles them to this point, and they had never had this experience ever like that again, and they hope it stays that way. Now, this recently happened to what happened to be one of my friends that I have been close with for about over 10 years now. This happened to my friend named Jessica, and she was married to this one guy named Xavier. Xavier and Jessica have been married for about out a couple years now, and during this time when they were in their honeymoon, this happened to be one of the most scariest times of their life. Now, to keep in mind, Jessica and Xavier were going on their honeymoon to Niagara Falls for at least a week. You know, that big place that is a city. However, it is very popular with a lot of things, and there was a lot of fun to do. Jessica and Xavier spent their first night there. However, the first night they unpacked their rooms and they even got to explore the place. It was pretty nice, and they didn't have to worry about anyone or any danger for that matter. They happened very well to take care of themselves. However, this was taking place sometime, I guess, in the last week of August of 2021. Now, it was the last full week of August, so they were there to spend that week on their honeymoon. They had gotten married about late July, so they decided to take their honeymoon at that time. During this time, though, this is when things started to get really weird. Now, Jessica was pretty much asleep when she woke up at 3 in the morning to hear someone or something banging on their door. Honestly, she had no idea what it was, but she looked around to think that maybe there was someone in the room, but how would there be anyone in the room? There was certainly nobody. There was nothing in the room. And of course, she called out to make sure nobody was there, but surprisingly, there was no response. This is when a lot of things started going on, and Jessica thought that maybe she was just imagining things. However, she just went to sleep when all of a sudden she heard banging again. Honestly, she was startled, and she ended up shooting herself up awake, thinking that there was someone there. However, she couldn't see anybody in the room, so honestly, she had no idea if someone was playing tricks on her or not. Her husband was asleep beside her, so there was no reason as to why they were awake. She eventually went to get a glass of water and goes to check out every place, making sure no one was hiding in there. Luckily, there was nobody hiding, so Jessica ended up going back to her bed where she fell asleep. Now, the next day, Xavier had the same experience, which was the second night. Xavier woke up hearing some noises and ends up going to check out the place just to make sure no one was tricking them. However, he didn't see anyone, and even if he called out, there was still no one in sight. No matter how many times he called out if anyone was there, he did it as quiet as he could just to make sure that Jessica didn't wake up getting worried. This is when and he decided to think that maybe somebody was just pulling a prank on him and that he would go to bed. He decided that if he keeps hearing that, he would report it to the security and room service and to have them have a look. That is when he ends up going back to bed, but just as he did that, he heard what seemed to be a clatter, like something in the washer going off. This was just weird, as there was no washer or dryer in the hotel room that they were staying in. So why would a washer and dryer be going off like a clang or something? Honestly, that is when Xavier decided to have a hidden camera in the room to see if there was really someone in there. He set it up in a corner and waited for a moment and decided that the next night he may record and catch something. Eventually, the night when he decided to put the camera there, he and Jessica were asleep when all of a sudden they woke up to loud frantic bangs coming from outside their hotel room. When Jessica and her boyfriend woke up, husband woke up. They were startled, and honestly, they ended up requesting a room change after that. However, when he looked at the video footage, there wasn't anything except for near the end of the video where the loud banging was heard. Unfortunately, no one found anything in that room, so they requested a different room, to which they got a different room. However, by this experience, they have no idea if what they experienced on their honeymoon that day was completely paranormal or not. They would like to think that maybe this was just a trick, but at the same time, they have highly doubts about that. For a bit of context, this actually happened to one of my friends who happened to have this experience when their parents were on their honeymoon. Of course, they weren't with their parents, but the parents I will refer to is Ivy and Max. Ivy and Max decided to go on their second honeymoon as they hadn't been on a honeymoon in quite a couple years. This took place in 2007, so one of my friends was around 8 at the time, said he barely remembers this story, so I'm just gonna go by what he remembers. Ivy and Max had decided to go on a honeymoon somewhere in New York City, so they went there, and that's when everything started to go as according to plan. However, they decided that they would walk around the park area, and they ended up enjoying themselves there. However, as they were going on at the park in New York, it's one of the most biggest places, but of course it's something you should not do at nighttime. That's why Max is always by Ivy's side all the time, just so then that way it is not so scary for one person. As they were traveling and wandering around the park, that is when Ivy looked over at the bench that was only maybe 4 or 5 feet away from them. Now, since this was taking place in the fall of 2007, they honestly thought that maybe that was just some blanket or something, but that's when they decided to get a little bit more inspection of the park. There was nobody around, or barely anybody, with the exception of someone walking their dogs at night, or even some late night couples, or people coming back from drinking at the bar. That's when they realized that there was some sort of person. It appeared to be a woman, probably maybe in her late 30s, and she was having a blanket on as she was cold. Keep in mind it was a little chilly out, so that's why Max and Ivy thought that they should check on her to make sure she's okay. The woman looked up and she ended up giving a really blank stare, like showing no emotion whatsoever. It was kind of strange, but Max thought that maybe she was delusional or something. But of course, this woman did not say or speak a word. That's when Max ends up asking the woman if she's okay, and she says that she's fine, and says that her husband left her and asked if he could give her a ride. Honestly, their car was back at the hotel, so they decided that they can call somebody for her, like a taxi to pick them up, or possibly they can call the police if she needed, but she insisted that they end up taking her. Honestly, Ivy noticed something odd about that woman. It sounded like it was practiced. It wasn't of sorrow or anything, but it sounded like as if one wanted them to rehearse this act for something. Honestly, Max looked at Ivy, and Ivy ended up shrugging, saying that there was definitely something odd about this woman. This woman just stared at them like if there was nothing wrong, but of course there was something really odd about this woman. This woman was definitely staring and definitely gave Max a creepy looking vibe. Honestly, they had no idea who this woman was, but honestly, this is when things got really freaky. Ivy looked at Max and ended up telling Max that they should go, but this woman keep persisting they help her. However, that's when Ivy and Max noticed that there was something this woman was hiding behind her back that she didn't want them to see. And that's when Max ended up saying, I gotta go. My wife and I, we're on our honeymoon and we're gonna be heading off now. So, if we see you, maybe we'll talk later, he said. The woman said 5 words to this very day that really sent a chill down their spine. You've made the right decision. Honestly, Max, along with Ivy, decided to take the long way back just in case if this woman ever were to try to follow them. Fortunately, this woman did not follow them, but they took the long way around just to make sure that the woman wasn't following, to which she wasn't. Honestly, what really frightened them and what really shocked them was, why was this woman hiding something behind her back? Was she planning to try and rob them, kidnap them, or do God knows what? Honestly, they stopped going to that park at night during their honeymoon. Honestly, they thought that maybe the woman was no threat, but like they say, you can't judge a book by its cover. They decided to go back there the next day to see if the woman was there, but she was gone. That's when they ended up watching a local news report later on at a restaurant saying that a woman was kidnapped when she was alone by a woman in her 30s as well as 3 older men. And the picture on the screen was the exact same woman that they had discovered that night when they were wandering at the park. Ivy and Max had no idea what would have happened to them if they accepted her help. Could they have suffered the same fate or be robbed? That was honestly something they had no idea and certainly do not ever want to find out. Nothing like that has ever happened since their honeymoon, but their honeymoon was pretty good nevertheless.